Oh yeah, here comes the press secretary and the secretary of the Treasury.
The president's latest statement regarding his America First trade plan. As you all know, the president just put out a statement announcing an additional tariff on China. The tariff on China will now go up to 125%. because China imprudently decided to retaliate against the United States. And as I said at the podium yesterday, when you punch at the United States of America, President Trump is going to punch back harder. In that same vein, we have had more than 75 countries from around the world reach out to President Trump and his team here at the White House to negotiate better trade deals for the American worker. We have been overwhelmed with the amount of requests from countries around the world. I'll let the Secretary speak to that. We will continue with the tailor-made negotiations that I spoke about yesterday. In the meantime, there will be a 90-day pause on the reciprocal tariffs as these negotiations are ongoing, and the tariff level will be brought down to a universal 10% tariff. The Secretary here has been a huge part of the President's trade team, of course, and will continue to lead these negotiations moving forward to look out for the American worker, which is always President Trump's goal. So I'll kick it over to our great Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent.
Good, thank you. And we saw the successful negotiating strategy that President Trump implemented a week ago today. It has brought more than 75 countries forward to negotiate. It took great courage for him to stay the course until this moment. And what we have ended up with here, as I told everyone a week ago, they're in this very spot, do not retaliate, and you will be rewarded. So every country in the world who wants to come and negotiate, we are willing to hear you. We're going to go down to a 10% baseline tariff for them, and China will be raised to 125 due to their insistence on escalation.
Secretary, thank you for doing this. Let me ask you three quick things, if I could, just for the sake of clarity, because the markets are open and they're wondering. First of all, Mexico and China, are they part of this 10% universal?
Well, China, no, China.
Mexico and Canada, are they part of the 10%?
Yes.
Okay. Second, given then that you have the rest of the world essentially calling it, it's not China, is this now just all about China?
Well, it's about bad actors, and what we will see is some of the very early countries are China's neighbors. That we're going to see. I'm seeing Vietnam today. Japan's at the front of the queue. South Korea, India. So we will see. And as I've repeatedly said, and President Trump has been saying it for years, China is the most imbalanced economy in the history of the modern world, and they are the biggest source of the U.S. trade problems. And indeed, they are problems for the rest of the world, because what we've seen is that as the U.S. announced a tariff wall last week, many of those goods have already started flooding into Europe.
So as you see it now, this trade war is China versus the rest of the world?
Well, I'm not calling it a trade war, but I'm saying that China has escalated, and President Trump responded very courageously to that, and we are going to work on a solution with our trading partners.
If I could just, excuse me, Raquel, if I could just add to what the Secretary said. Many of you in the media clearly missed the art of the deal. You clearly failed to see what President Trump is doing here. You tried to say that the rest of the world would be moved closer to China, when in fact we've seen the opposite effect. The entire world is calling the United States of America, not China, because they need our markets, they need our consumers, and they need this president in the Oval Office to talk to them. And that's exactly why more than 75 countries have called, because the United States of America is the best place in the world to do business. And as the president has shown great courage, as the Secretary has said, in choosing to retaliate against China even higher. Elena, go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Treasury Secretary Bessent. Can you explain more of the decision-making on what feels like a reversal here? I mean, these went into effect less than 15 hours ago, these tariffs. Why the pause now? What led to that?
No. Again, President Trump created maximum negotiating leverage for himself, and which tariffs went into effect 15 hours ago? The ones that we have lowered went into effect a week ago. They were announced a week ago, and we have just been overwhelmed by the response from mostly our allies who want to come and negotiate in good faith. So we are expecting them to come with their best deal. As I said a week ago today, don't retaliate, hold your ground, let's see what happens. And China, they kept escalating and escalating, and now they have 125% tariffs that will be effective immediately.
Mr. Secretary,
Go ahead.
Mr. Secretary, thanks so much for doing this. The 90-day pause on the reciprocal tariffs, is that because of the whiplash that we've been seeing across the financial markets? How much was, what we saw in the stock markets, a part of this decision?
No, it's because because of the large number of inbounds. We've had more than 75 countries contact us, and I imagine after today there will be more. So it is just a processing problem. Each one of these solutions is going to be bespoke. It is going to take some time, and President Trump wants to be personally involved. So that's why we're getting the 90-day pause.
Clarification. Mr. Secretary, there was a tweet that you and Secretary Lutnick were in the Oval Office with the President talking about this. Can you talk about what that conversation was like and what you guys said to one another that led to this decision?
Look, it's all the President's decision, and the President had a level in mind to raise the China tariffs, and then he had the 3-month pause in mind, and we were discussing the exact wording. Sorry? Of course.
It's the president's decision.
It's the president's decision. It was the president's decision to wait until today. And again, as I've said in the past, no one creates leverage for himself like President Trump.
Mr. Secretary.
Shelby, go ahead.
Mr. Secretary, what does the president want to see by this, I think it's July 9th deadline to keep things paused? Is it just trade barriers coming down, or is it more than that? These are trade negotiations, but if countries want to come and offer other things, I talked about yesterday that we are thinking about a big LNG project in Alaska that South Korea, Japan, Taiwan are interested in financing and taking a substantial portion of the offtake. But again, in essence, that is trade because it will decrease the trade deficit that we have with those countries. So everything's on the table.
Raquel, go ahead.
Secretary, a clarification on the pause. What happened to those countries who just had 10% baseline tariffs, like Brazil and others? Are they still going to have this 90 days pause? Because you were saying that there will be a tariff of 10% for others. So what happened to those who just had a 10%?
Yeah, that's going to remain.
Mr. Secretary.
And do you call this an embargo to China?
Pardon?
You call this an embargo to China, a trade embargo?
I'm not sure what you mean by the word embargo.
125% tariffs, like those, and then you impose 84%. Isn't this an embargo?
Well, it's not. It's China's decision that we have the deficit with them. They sell us almost 5 times what we sell them. So again, I think it's an own goal by China.
Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Secretary, with this, does this signal that you're confident that you're going to be able to strike a satisfactory deal with all these 75 nations that approach you?
It signals that President Trump cares about trade and that we want to negotiate in good faith. And as I said, each one of these is going to be a separate, bespoke negotiation. So we are confident that having seen the other side of where this could go, and it was like I said last week, the market didn't understand. Those were maximum levels. The countries can think about those levels as they come to us to bring down their tariffs, their non-tariff trade barriers. We're going to discuss currency manipulation, subsidy of labor, and industry.
Secretary, as far as you, will the pause also apply to the sectoral tariffs that the president has announced, pharma, lumber, anything else?
No, it's on the reciprocal.
So those will still be coming here soon, right?
Mr. Secretary.
As far as the negotiations with those 75
Andrea, go ahead.
Mr. Secretary, so I want to ask you about what you're doing here. So the market is reacting crazily, right?
I haven't seen it.
Do you think that this move is going to sort of change and calm down the market reaction?
What?
Do you think the markets have tanked, right? There's been a lot of volatility in the market, not just in terms of stock markets, but also in terms of bonds. So will this move in your mind to anticipate that this is going to calm the markets down?
Well, I think what we've seen, I think the willingness by more than 75 countries to come and negotiate, I think now the market understands that everything they saw last Wednesday was a ceiling, and now we have a 10% temporary floor. And I think the market, my 35 years in the market, I always wanted certainty, so I think we've got more certainty.
But Mr. Secretary,
Maggie, go ahead.
Mr. Secretary, why do people assume this is the last word? The president began this morning saying, be cool. 5 hours later, he announces a new policy. Why will investors in the market assume that this is it?
Because, again, as I said, we've given 90 days, and the only certainty we can provide is that the U.S. is going to negotiate in good faith, and we assume that our allies will too. And in terms of certainty, we will see what China does. But what I am certain of is that what China is doing will affect their economy much more than it will ours, because they have an export-driven, flood the world with cheap export models, and the rest of the world now understands, because when we put up our tariff wall, those exports were already flowing to the rest of the G7 and to the global South.
And you think
Mr. Secretary, how much of this decision was driven by the bond market cratering overnight? What is happening with bonds? Is China selling their bonds?
I have nothing that says that, and we actually had quite a good 10-year auction today, and all this was, again, this was driven by the president's strategy. He and I had a long talk on Sunday, and this was his strategy all along, and that, you might even say that he goaded China into a bad position. They responded. They have shown themselves to the world to be the bad actors, and we are willing to cooperate with our allies and with our trading partners who did not retaliate. It wasn't a hard message. Don't retaliate. Things will turn out well.
What's your message? Political articles saying that the countries were getting calls back.
These negotiations with these 75 countries, how long will that take? Will it be a matter of weeks? Will it be a matter of months? Do you expect financial markets to be stable during that time period?
Well, we've started with a 90-day pause, and we will see if more countries turn up, what will happen. But we have a meeting with Vietnam today, and we have one of the largest trade deficits with them, so I'm hoping it will move in a good direction. I was at the Japanese ambassador's house last night for the Cherry Blossom Festival, which was quite festive, and he and I had a good chat. They are going to send a deal team over, so we'll see. These are complicated negotiations. These are imbalances that have taken decades to create, but I think having seen the maximum level that Donald Trump is willing to go to, President Trump has created this negotiating leverage.
Excuse me, everybody. Excuse me. The secretary is obviously a very busy man, as he has said. He's had more than 75 countries that the trade team has to respond to. I'd just like to end with this. For decades, Republicans and Democrats have said that these unfair trade practices are ripping off the American people, are ripping off our country, but nobody has ever done anything to address it. We finally have a president here at the White House who is playing the long game, who is doing what is right for the American worker and our industries here at home, and he has put together a fantastic team in Secretary Bessent, Secretary Lutnick, the entire trade team, who will be focusing on negotiating these good deals to put the American workers first, and we're going to get to work to do that. Thank you.
What about the EU? What about the EU? They retaliated this morning.
Exactly. On the breaking news, let's bring in Charlie Gasparino from Fox Business Network now. Whew, this is quite the moment. As you can imagine, the art of the deals all over the Twitter sphere right now, as people say, I mean, maybe this is the way he planned it. To John's point, Charlie, about the Treasury Secretary saying maybe you could say that he goaded China into a bad position for themselves. Well, don't retaliate. Things will work out well, he said.
I mean, I want to tell you right now that Donald Trump outsmarted the world. Trust me. I'm an American. I support my president. But that's not really what happened here, from what I understand. And I know I'll get pushback, but here's what it is. First off, we should point out that one of the good things about this is that Scott Bessent is finally in the White House. He's finally leading this. I mean, up until a couple of days ago, it was Lutnick, it was Peter Navarro, the Commerce Secretary, the trade advisor, very much hawks. Now it's Scott Bessent, who believes in cutting deals as opposed to, just just putting these tariffs out there and let's be a mercantilistic economy. That's number one. But number two, let's recall what happened overnight. And from what I understand, and I'm getting this from people that are talking to the White House, what happened in the bond market overnight, the spike in yields on the 30-year and the 10-year bond, which showed that people were dumping our bonds. And who were those people dumping our bonds? Japan, the biggest holder of bonds, was selling bonds. That's what I'm getting from some very big money managers. China, maybe to some extent, but it was largely Japan and others. If you have a mass sale of bonds, that means people are losing confidence in the U.S. economy, on the ability to do deals with us. And from what I understand, this is what forced the hand of this 90-day reprieve. Now, is it a good thing? Are people coming to the table? Yeah. But if you read between the lines, or not even what Scott Bessent said, we have no deals. Right? There's nobody that is really there saying this is what we're going to do. And they paused it anyway. So my thing that said, well, I'll give you this. There is some art of the deal here. And by the way, brilliant move by putting China in the corner. But that's a whole separate thing. Because remember, that's a very difficult negotiation. Everybody else is a lot easier. They do want to deal with us. Whether they want to be, forced into really bad trade deals on their end is a whole other negotiating story. But make no mistake about it, you cannot divorce this decision right here from what happened last night, which was, people focus on the stock market all the time. It's the bond market and the sort of lending markets that's the plumbing of the economy. And those markets were imploding last night. And that's why we have a 90-day freeze. Let's see if those markets improve. Someone told me we had a decent Treasury auction today. But if you can't sell your Treasuries, guys, and people are unloading your Treasuries, like Japan, which is, I believe, the largest foreign holder after China.
Just to be clear, there was an auction that just happened a few moments ago that Bessent just referenced, and it was a healthy auction, Charlie.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Right? So we got a good, healthy auction on some of this stuff. But be real clear, there were problems in the plumbings of the market. And from what I understand, and I'm talking to sophisticated, I'm not talking to some guy at, trading off his Robinhood account. I'm talking to major hedge fund players who deal with the White House, who deal with Bessent. And Bessent knows this. He told the president this. Yeah. We have a real problem with plumbing. And if we have a problem with plumbing, it's game over. Anyway, back to you guys. That's my happy note of the day.
David, quick.
Well, all I could do, you pointed me to the Daily Mail headline, Sandra, and I'm just going to put it up. I don't know if you can see it on screen. It's a picture of Trump from last night, and it says, "We are so back. Stock market goes stratospheric for Trump." One thing that this does clearly, at least for today, is it takes the issue away from Trump's political enemies, particularly the Democratic Party, and they no longer have this in their pocket as something to go into the midterm elections where anything can happen over the next 90 days. But at least for now, politically speaking, this is excellent for Donald Trump.
Well, let's not forget that when it comes to politics, a day is a long time, a week is forever, and those elections aren't until November of next year. So,
interesting to see that the rally that we saw immediately after the Truth Social post went out is holding. In fact, it's right up near the highs of the session now, up 2,400.
Yep, still 4,000 off of the highs so far this year, but a lot better than where it was a couple of days ago. We've got Senator Ted Cruz from Texas on the line with us. Senator, you have been very critical of the president's tariff plan. You have appealed to his aides to stop encouraging him down this path. After the news today, what are you thinking?
Well, I think today's announcement was terrific. And let me be clear, John. What I've said, I actually think the president is exactly right to be standing up and fighting for reciprocity. That is the right principle. I also think it's exactly right that he is focusing on China. Those have been the two things that I've been urging the president: focus on China, focus on reciprocity. The point that I've been making, particularly the last several days since the president's big tariff announcement, is that we have a fork in the road. We have two paths that the president and the White House can go down. One path is use these threatened tariffs to negotiate dramatically lower tariffs with our trading partners and then lower American tariffs to match. And if the president does that, he has the opportunity to have one of the greatest economic victories for America we've ever seen in history, one of the greatest free trade and free market and fair trade victories we've ever seen. The other path is a path that leaves high tariffs in place in perpetuity, that results in our trading partners putting high tariffs on the other side. And what I've said is that path is a terrible path for Texas, for America. And so I spent an hour on the phone with the president last night urging him, go down the road. President Trump has an opportunity to win a huge victory for American workers. And I think today's announcement is an indication of his going down the path of lowering tariffs all over the world, but making sure America is treated fairly, which is exactly right.
All right, so we see these reciprocal tariffs being lowered to 10% for these 75 countries. The 90-day pause put on as well. Apparently that includes Canada, which had taken some retaliatory action against the United States. China's the big outlier in all of this. It's facing 125% tariff. And I don't know if you heard it, but Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, said that the president goaded China into taking a really bad position. Do you believe that Xi Jinping allowed himself to get played like this?
Look, I think that's a fair interpretation of what happened. I also think China poses the single greatest geopolitical threat to the United States over the next 100 years. I've been saying that for more than a decade. I'll tell you, John, when I was first elected in 2012, I came to Washington and was saying that China was our greatest threat for the next 100 years. At the time, nobody agreed with me. Every Democrat disagreed, and just about every Republican. They all looked at China and saw dollar signs as far as the eye can see. I think there's a far broader consensus now that China is waging a 1,000-year war with the United States. And so I think any policy we can do to de-link our economy from China is a good policy. And so I think the president focusing his principal tariff efforts on China is very good for U.S. economic security and very good for U.S. national security.
All right. I do want to just diverge here for a second from the breaking news of the day, because I know that this is a very important issue for you, and that is the idea of transgender athletes in women's sports. You sent a letter to the CEO of USA Fencing about the Stephanie Turner issue, and we had her on the program last week. She took a knee against a transgender biological male individual, saying, "This is not fair. I'm not going to fight you." She got disqualified from the tournament. This is what you wrote to the fencing CEO, Fencing USA CEO. You wrote, quote, "It has come to my attention that USA Fencing is still permitting men to compete in women's fencing in violation of federal law. Congress may be forced to terminate USA Fencing's National Governing Board certification." I mean, you're playing hardball here, Senator.
Absolutely. And I am the chairman of the Senate Commerce Committee, which has jurisdiction over, among other things, athletics, has jurisdiction over the Olympics. And I got to say, it is fundamentally wrong. It is unfair to force girls to compete against boys in sports, to force women to compete against men. There's a reason we have a WNBA. There's a reason LeBron James doesn't play in the WNBA. Men and women are different. Boys and girls are different. And moms and dads across America know that. In this instance, what USA Fencing did was wrong, disqualifying her from the competition simply because she was not willing to compete against a male. And so I'm engaging in oversight to, number one, find out from USA Fencing how many biological men are competing, how often are they winning, how many injuries have occurred, and what are they doing to comply with federal law? Because if they don't comply with federal law, there will be serious consequences.
Why do you think these organizations are so quick to erase women from women's sports? And that was really highlighted by what happened recently in the UK, where in the women's division of pool billiards, the finalists were two biological males.
Look, there is a radical ideology that the left has embraced, and it is every Democrat. We just had a vote in the Senate about a month ago on protecting girls from boys competing in sports. Every single Senate Democrat, all of them, voted no. We will not protect your daughters. the Democrat Party has decided there is no difference between men and women. There is no difference between boys and girls. And that used to be a fringe radical ideology. It is now the view of every single Senate Democrat and as far as I know, every single House Democrat. And I got to tell you, ordinary Americans understand. Look, I'm the father of 2 daughters. My youngest daughter's a terrific volleyball player. It would not be fair if she was playing against a boy who was taller, who had more muscle mass, who had testosterone. That's not fair. And I think women's sports is fantastic. It gives great opportunity to girls and women. We need to protect that. That used to be common sense and bipartisan. Sadly, today's Democrats have abandoned common sense.
All right. Well, this is an issue that we're watching very closely and covering at length here on the Fox News channel. Thank you for being with us, Senator. Appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
All right, Sandra.
California Congressman Ro Khanna, a member of the House Select Committee on China. The person I was looking at was definitely not you, Representative Khanna. So we're going to talk to someone else in just a second. I just wanted to make sure we were lined up here. So good to have you here, Congressman. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on this move today, the pause for 90 days with most countries that we deal with, and a big tariff on China.
Well, I'm glad that common sense finally prevailed. Look, what happened is Bill Ackman tweeted out that the bond markets were going crazy. I mean, you didn't just have a massive drop in the stock market. You had people freaking out that people were selling treasuries. The bond yields were going up to 4.5%. And people who voted for Trump were basically saying, you're destroying the economy, stop it. Even Elon Musk was saying that. I mean, Tesla's was getting destroyed. And so economic rationality finally seems to have broken through, but there's still a totally irrational policy of a blanket 10% tariff on every country, including allies. Now, I support tariffs on China. The Select Committee has supported tariffs on China, but not this and not the chaos they've created.
Well, you know, we've heard and seen in the past that Democrats, including Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, have talked about the trade imbalance with China as being a huge negative for America and American workers in this country. And you hear that President Trump saying, look, someone had to do it. And, you know, you can talk about why he made this change today. But if we end up with better trade deals with many of these countries that are more advantageous to us, don't you think that was worth it?
Well, the jury's still out. Right now, we've gotten worse trade deals. I mean, Europe has increased its tariffs on our goods. Canada has increased our tariffs. So if we end up in a situation where the tariffs are better, then I would give the president credit on negotiation. But he didn't have to put the country through this. He didn't have to destroy.
The markets are right back where they were when this announcement was made, or pretty darn close. You know, maybe what you have to do is shake up the chessboard a bit in order to reset these trade arrangements, and it doesn't seem like anything prior to this by any prior administration sort of allowed that to happen.
Well, it's unclear that there's anything geared. I haven't heard one country say that we're lowering our tariffs on the United States. And we still have, remember, he's increased tariffs 10% on every country around the world. That means avocados are going to cost more, cars are going to cost more, building is going to cost more in America at a time of inflation. So that global 10% tariff makes no sense. And Bill Ackman would say that, Jamie Dimon would say that, most people, economists would say that. I think when it comes to China, we do need to take a tough approach, and we do need tariffs, and we do need negotiation. But what I don't understand is why a 10% global tariff, and why did he have the markets go down and have the bond market be as disrupted as he did?
Yeah, the bond market seems to be coming back a little bit. It's a good question. You know, the bond markets are wily. And obviously, when you see people selling a lot of bonds, it makes people concerned about that typical safe haven for U.S. and global investors. And I think that, you know, maybe that's what the president was talking about when he said that people were getting a bit queasy and yippy. And that was one of the things that triggered this change. Do you think that was part of the reason for the move today?
Absolutely. I think he read Bill Ackman's tweet. I mean, Bill Ackman basically said this is economic stupidity. Elon Musk said the same thing, economic stupidity. And I'm sure he saw that the bond markets were going up, the yields were going up, the markets were going down. If he hadn't done this, we could have probably been in a huge recession. I'm glad he did this. I'm glad he's listening to...
It's interesting, because I was listening to Jamie Dimon earlier this morning on with Maria Bartiromo, and he essentially said, yeah, this had to happen. He said, I hope we don't have a recession, but we do need to recalibrate these global trade relationships with it, which, as I said, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer have made these points in very forceful ways on the floor of Congress before. So do you not think that we need to reset our trade relationships in a more advantageous way to the United States?
Of course we do, but we don't have to destroy our economy to do it.
Well, you kind of have to put people on their back foot, right, to get these things rolling.
Not in this way. What we should have done is have strategic tariffs on China from the beginning. And if he had just announced that, he would have had bipartisan support from the Congress. Why is he having tariffs on Canada and Japan and Mexico and France and every country? Why is he making consumer prices 10% higher? Why is he coming one day on a policy and then overturning it 3 days later? And now no one knows whether he's going to have tariffs again back on these countries in 90 days. He has created extraordinary economic uncertainty in America, and I fundamentally believe he needs a reset of his economic team.
All right. As we said, we're about where we started. It was only been a few days, Wednesday of last week, when this process began, and the markets are pretty much where they were when that announcement came out. So we'll see. As you point out, we have to watch and see how these trade deals actually shake out, and if they give the United States an advantage, and all of that is to come in the next 90 days. We'll be watching it. Congressman Khanna, thank you so much. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Another wild ride on the Trump tariff coaster, stocks seeing green, with President Trump authorizing a 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs for the 75 countries that haven't retaliated, but across the board, 10% still in effect. Trump the merciful, giving nations a break as he turns the big guns on China, slapping the commies with an increased tariff that is now 125%, and says it's based on the lack of respect. 47 says, just be cool.
Just be cool. It's going to work out. Well, I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy, you know. They were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid. Nothing's over yet, but we have a tremendous amount of spirit from other countries, including China. China wants to make a deal. A deal's going to be made with China. A deal's going to be made with every one of them. And there'll be fair deals. I just want fair. They will be fair deals for everybody. The big move wasn't what I did today. The big move was what I did on Liberation Day. You have to have flexibility.
And the White House is telling China and the media they should have read the art of the deal.
This was his strategy all along, and that, you might even say that he goaded China into a bad position. They responded. They have shown themselves to the world to be the bad actors. And we are willing to cooperate with our allies and with our trading partners who did not retaliate.
Many of you in the media clearly missed the art of the deal. You clearly failed to see what President Trump is doing here. You tried to say that the rest of the world would be moved closer to China when in fact we've seen the opposite effect. The entire world is calling the United States of America, not China.
Be cool, Jessica. Just be cool. Are you cool?
Not so much.
No?
Not cool. A little hot. It's great to be here.
Around the table.
Around the table.
You're saying that now?
To be
Good
back.
opening line.
Thank you. Trump even admitted that it wasn't the art of the deal or be cool. He said he was watching the bond market. And that's what decided this. He had to cave. I think CNBC's Steve Leisman, he said he didn't just flinch, he ducked. There are trillions still lost. And our very own Charlie Gasparino has been on for the last couple of hours saying that he wished it weren't so, but that the truth is that the White House capitulated. We still have tons of tariffs on, even our closest trading partners. They still don't make any sense. There's a lack of clarity on the specific numbers for Mexico and Canada. But what always sticks out to me when we go on this, on this Trumpian merry-go-round is the ritualistic humiliation that he subjects the people who work for him to. So Besson says this was the plan all along. So you were okay then with being made out to be a complete liar because you've been doing interviews on our network, going on the Sunday show, saying absolutely not, that we're not capitulating on this. We're not going back on it. Caroline Levitt calling fake news as recently as yesterday. Lutnick, he was on with you multiple times, it felt like, or it was the world's longest interview, talking about how this isn't a joke and, you know, we'll be a manufacturing economy, which we don't even want to be. And I'm looking at like how we got to this point, and obviously the market had to do it, the bond market in particular, once Japan started selling them off. And did you know earlier this afternoon that Greek bonds were a safer investment than U.S. 30 years? Can you believe that? The Greeks?
Jessica, you don't even know what you're talking about.
Yes, I do.
You don't even know what a bond is. Now, Judge Jeanine, Jessica keeps on saying that Trump caved. How is this a cave if he got 75 nations to get to the negotiating table and redo their tariffs against the United States?
You want me to answer the question? Okay. Here's the thing. China was always the end game. Trump won. He's doing exactly what he said he would do. He said there would be short-term pain for long-term gain. He literally got everybody in the world to come to the table, or they're trying, they're calling, they're flying in, they're trying to make a deal. And he sent a message to those countries that were willing to make a deal with the United States. Let's do something mutually beneficial for both of us. Right now, his timing was right to the edge, and it was a business decision to get everyone to the table so everyone can win. If there's a standoff, nobody wins. But now, this is the biggest win for America because we've got a level playing field. We are no longer a doormat for other countries. We've got a president who has the capacity, the ability, and the stamina to fight to make sure that we are at least a manufacturing country again. You say United States doesn't want to be a manufacturing country. We lost 90,000 manufacturing businesses. We want to be. Let me finish. I didn't interrupt you. All right. What we want is we want everyone who needs us to, number one, be able to rely on us, and we need to be able to work with them. And they will reap benefits by working with us. And we can create a group deal around China, whether it's Taiwan, Vietnam, and North Korea, South Korea, and trying to make sure that we get people who want to work with us. China can bully us, there's no question about it. But they need our market and they need our customers. And right now, the Dow is dancing. The market moved up with incredible velocity, and the S&P for the year is down only 7%, which is nothing. All he cared about was a good result and creating a deal, and that's what he got.
Now, Greg, everybody that now is negotiating with the president knows the pain that tariffs can cause their economies. So when they're cutting a new deal, Trump can just say, all right, I don't like where this is going. Tariffs are going back up.
Becomes bespoke.
Tailored
tariffs. I'm very happy for Madagascar. I was worried about not getting my vanilla or my cloves. Judge is right. There's two steps here. China was isolated. All the other countries are coming to the table, done and done. If this upsets Democrats, you have then made another odd group that you have sided with. Tesla vandals, migrant gangs, men invading women's spaces, and now communist China. It is hysterical to me what Trump forces you to defend. You know, if Trump would come out in defense of puppies, the Democrats would firebomb the pound. But anyway, the bigger story, if you look at the stock market, is this flip. I remember when the Democrats were the party of Main Street and the Republicans were the party of Wall Street. Something's happened. Have you noticed? And I think, Trump, it's been going on for a while. This isn't an anomaly. Trump is radically, pathologically Main Street. If you step back and you look at the entire package, right? So sealing the border, that's Main Street. That ain't Wall Street. Deporting criminals, that's Main Street. Getting creeps out of women's sports, Main Street. Going after fentanyl, Wall Street didn't care about that. That was hillbilly heroin. That's Main Street. We all knew somebody who died from that. And the zebra mussels, the fish, Main Street. Trump's radical. in the thing that, like, all of these issues rely on the fundamental mechanism of Democrats and Republicans' survival through kicking the can down the road. Every single issue, they kick the can down the road because they don't want to engage any risk that would cause them to lose an election. He's got midterms in 2 years. He doesn't give two Fs. He's doing this. You might not see the results of this in 3 years or 4 years or 10 years. He doesn't care. It is radical that he is not relying on that survival mechanism, which is he's crushing the can. He ain't kicking it. That's amazing. Meanwhile, you got to look at the elites. All the people screaming about the stock market, these were the experts that said 2 weeks to stop the spread. You know, that the P-tape is real, the laptop is fake, the border's secure, Russian collusion's really happening, Joe Biden is fine. And then when they pretend to have a solution, what is the solution? Giant programs, lots of spending, and war. Those are their solutions. And he's against it. He is perhaps the most radical president we've ever had. And I think this is why the Democrats are so confused. They're so used to being on the motorcycle, wearing the leather jacket. Now they're Dean Warmer, you know, with a buzz cut, smoking their pipe, going, "What? The world is passing me by."
Dana, your philosophy this whole time has been, let's just wait and see.
And I'm still there.
Taking it day by day.
Still there because in 90 days, the laws of economics are not going to change. The laws of economics and the laws of they're just the laws. And that's the way that they are. That's the facts. And I think the pause was the right decision. I think the messaging is a huge shift as well. Earlier today, with Maria Bartiromo, CEO of J.P. Morgan, Jamie Dimon said it would be good to let Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, take the lead here and not to have so many different voices saying different things. And which is interesting because all of those different voices today are claiming that they were right and that they're the genius, right? I mean, so something that to me is weird. I also think that a lot of the issues though, that President Trump is doing, it's not just Main Street. These are like 90-10 issues.
Yes.
And that 90% of the country agrees with him. So that encompasses a lot of people on Wall Street as well. And you have a ton of people who were saying, excuse me, sir, but I just lost, $10,000 of my 401k, and that matters to them. And so when he says people are getting yippy, I think that Bessent was able to say, sir, we need a minute here for us to get this under control and for me to be in the lead. And to me, Bessent taking the mic today was a great thing. I would add one other thing about COVID, and it's gotten swept under the rug, obviously, by China, but also by the Biden administration. There is a new report out of the Free Beacon that there were a few, it was like
7?
4 or 5, Americans who came down with COVID in October of 2019. And the Biden administration got this report and they buried it. So if I were Bessent or Trump or those guys, if they're coming up with yet more reasons to do the trade war with China, I think uniting the world against China on COVID is a really good one. Remind them of what we've all gone through, what we're still going through, what the children of this nation are going through, especially in this country, who, because their test scores are way down, they missed all that schooling, their maturity is way down, their lives are going to change dramatically because of what they lost, not to mention all the people who lost their loved ones. So there is a way to try to get that. But I would just end by saying, I think the pause is the right thing to do, but it didn't even have to get this way. It could have been done another way. You could do it the hard way or the easy way. I think that this was kind of the harder way, but maybe it's genius and everybody can claim that they were right.
Maybe it's genius.
Yep, I'm with you, Jesse.
Senior White House correspondent Jackie Heinrich begins our coverage live from the North Lawn. Good evening, Jackie.
Good evening, Brett. 90 days of reprieve for everyone except China, which got whacked with an increase to 125%. A universal 10% tariff is in place while country-specific deals come together and sector-specific tariffs remain. Now, the president said he mulled this for a couple of days, but made his decision this morning, expressing desire to limit impacts to undeserving countries.
Well, I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy, they were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid.
After safe haven Treasury bonds spiked overnight, indicating eroding confidence in the U.S. economy, the president told the world, be cool, everything is going to work out well, only to reverse course less than 4 hours later with a 90-day pause for all countries but China. The Treasury Secretary rolled out to explain.
How much of this decision was driven by the bond market cratering overnight?
This was his strategy all along, and that you might even say that he goaded China into a bad position.
That's not what the White House was saying yesterday.
He's not considering an extension or a delay.
The news catching the U.S. trade representative off guard.
How long is the pause? How many days? How many weeks?
I understand it's 90 days. I haven't spoken to the president since I've been in
So the
this
trade
hearing.
representative hasn't spoken to the president of the United States about a global reordering of trade.
Yes, I have.
And
I've just
yet
been in the hearing with you.
Democrats tried to take credit.
Donald Trump is feeling the heat from Democrats and across America about how bad these tariffs are. He is reeling. He is retreating.
But the president revealed this.
I was watching the bond market. The bond market is very tricky. The bond market right now is beautiful. But yeah, I saw last night where people were getting a little queasy. You have to have flexibility.
Earning praise.
President Trump created maximum negotiating leverage for himself.
Credibility is a thing where it takes a long time to build up and only a short time to lose. I'm glad that we've had a demonstration that the president is able to listen.
Officials here say outreach from countries wanting to make deals was impossible to manage while also maintaining respect for them. The president says that this systemic problem has been revealed and he plans to cure it. Also tonight, Goldman Sachs rescinded its recession call, Brett.
And Jackie, this back and forth with China, one casualty of all of this, the fast-track deal for TikTok. What's the latest with that?
Yeah, the president said that China wasn't thrilled at the prospect of greenlighting a deal to sell TikTok to a U.S. buyer amid this tariff war. A near-done deal was reportedly scuttled by China last week. Still, the president said that some good buyers are ready and a deal is on the table. He also said he believes that China will ultimately want to move forward with it. Brett.
Jackie Heinrich live in the North Lawn. Jackie, thank you.
Would you be open to a pause in tariffs to allow for negotiations?
Well, we're not looking at that.
Will you do a 90-day pause? Would you consider that?
Or Bill, yeah, I think that the president is going to decide what the president's going to decide.
Here's the thing. This is not a negotiation. There is no postponing. They are definitely going to stay in place for days and weeks. That is sort of obvious.
Well, there is a 90-day pause, and it led to a big spike in the markets today. Let's bring in Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. Mr. Secretary, thanks for the time.
Hey, nice to be here.
Give us the backstory. How does this all develop today?
All right, so 2 days ago, the president truthed out that he was willing to negotiate with all these different countries that were interested. And then yesterday, he said he would do it in a bespoke fashion, one by one individually. And the calls were unbelievable. And the key was, it wasn't just calls from all these countries, because over 75 called, but they started calling and making real offers. Finally really digging in and understanding how they treat the U.S. unfairly and really offering us a clear path to where we could do really good deals with these countries. And so finally, Scott and I went in and we talked to the president and say, how would you like to deal with this? We have so many countries and they all want to do it now, like now. And then we came up with the view that, look, China is going in the other direction. Let's take on China because they're going in another direction. But with all these other countries, let's give them a chance to negotiate these deals. And that's what happened today.
Are you going to see those come to fruition this week, do you think? Or is it going to take days, weeks before those deals can be negotiated?
Well, I think the real deals will take some time, but we're going to start meeting with countries. I mean, I started calling them right after we walked out of the Oval Office today, started calling countries, talking to them and telling them, okay, this is the time, let's go, let's dig in, let's get it right, let's get it on. But really, Scott Bessent is going to take a lot of countries. I'm going to take a lot of countries. Ambassador Jameson Greer, who's our USTR, is going to be going back and forth and doing a lot of deals. but we are going to cover a lot of ground in these next 90 days, and we're going to start seeing countries really do the right thing for America. And I think this will unleash our farmers, this will unleash our ranchers and the fishermen of America, and we're going to reshore manufacturing. And I think you're going to see incredible growth start to being built from the United States of America.
But what do you say to these countries who say this is like back and forth? I'm, going one way or another. It's tariffs and it's not going to be moved and it's 10% at least, or we are negotiating. And, they say the U.S. maybe is, all over the place as far as policy. What do you say to those folks?
Well, that's not true. What they all called and said is we want to negotiate with you. We'll make fair transaction arrangements for doing trade with America. We'll change it. We'll modify it. We'll open our markets. We will do it with you. Please, please, can we meet with you today? Because my country has a 15% or 18% or 20% or 24%. Can't we come in and talk? And the answer is the president said, all right, we'll keep the 10% in place. So he put tariffs on every country in the world at 10%, but we're not going to go higher. We'll give you a chance to negotiate. And after you negotiate, if you don't really bring it, you know what the number is going to be. So, you better bring it fully with us to do the right deal, or that's going to be your tariff going forward.
And as far as China is concerned, you're at 125% now. They've done 84%. Where is this heading? And do you think that negotiations with other countries are going to continue to put the pressure on China?
Well, I think China chose the path of going against Donald Trump. I mean, he said, don't retaliate. If you retaliate, then you're going to feel my wrath. And that's what happened. They retaliated. So then Donald Trump came back, and then they went back, and Donald Trump comes back again. The fact is either China's going to come to the table and make the right deal with Donald Trump, or they're not. And they are. I mean, remember, China has a $295 billion trade deficit with us, but they also go through all these other countries. They go through Vietnam, they go through Thailand, they go through Malaysia. These were all sort of like tariff runarounds where they go to Vietnam and then go to America. So, if you add that all up, it's just under $1 trillion that China sells to us, more than net we sell to them. And that is just not sustainable. The president knows it. The president is calling it out. And either China comes to the table with Donald Trump or they don't. But let's be clear, we are their biggest client by far, by far, by far. The American consumer buys everything from China. They can't afford to be without us, and that's where we are today.
So, Mr. Secretary, tonight you can definitively say this was not a walk back. This was not something that the bond markets were cratering and you were worried about it.
No.
That this is part of your plan. There's a lot of folks saying there were just mixed messages that really left the markets jittery.
Donald Trump is the best negotiator that there is. He understands how to do these things. And these were crystal clear instructions. No negotiating till 2 days ago. He would be willing to negotiate, but broadly. And then yesterday was, I'll do bespoke. And bespoke, that's what launched it. I mean, every country wanted to come and talk to us. And what are we supposed to do? So Scott and I went in and talked to him about what do we do and how do we do it. And I think this is where we are. So the president made his decision. He truthed it out with Scott and I in the room, just the three of us together. And this is where we are. Scott, Bessent, myself, and Ambassador Jameson Greer, who's our USTR, just have so much work to do with so many different countries. But we've got to make fair deals for America. And Donald Trump said, for the big countries, the lead negotiator of those transactions is going to be Donald Trump. He wants to do it. He wants to drive it. And what could be more fun for Scott and I?
Mr. Secretary, we appreciate the time.
Great to see you, Brett.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.